This is Dave Grooman. We're live, and we're talking to him about his time on the road as a touring guitar tech. And who have you toured with, Dave?
So the main acts that I've toured with for like an extensive period of time would be the Sword. I was with them for like almost a decade. I was with Ryan Adams for 4 or 5 years, all the way up until about a little over a year ago.
Uh huh.
Uh, and then I've been with Clutch for over a year now, and they're old friends. Like the Sword had done a bunch of support tours for them, so I'd met their crew and the band, all just like great guys.
Uh huh.
And they had some of their, I mean, it's one of those bands where some of their crew members have been with them since the early 90s. And so they had a couple dudes just kind of retire or move on to other gigs, and they kind of re-sculpted their
Mm-hmm.
crew. I was one of the first people that they called, and was honored because I always looked up to their crew and their level of professionalism. And the first tour I did with them, I was just like, "Whoa, that's what a crew guy does," And
So
I was
that's
on.
that's kind of what I'm interested in finding out. I mean, you're in show business. Like this is, this isn't guys in vans fucking around. You're actually like, this is real show business stuff, right?
Totally, very much so.
And
I mean, I've done it
like
all.
like the like almost like show science. Like it's down to kind of a science of how you get in, get out, get the show done, and make some fucking money, right?
Very much, and like one of the closest things that I can really, without like being insensitive, but one of the few things that I've ever been able to equate it to would be like military service. Almost
Yeah.
like everything is dictated down to the like you have your job, do your job. Don't ask me how to do it. Just surprise me with what you're able to come up with, kind of a
Hmm.
thing. And it's very regimented, and you kind of get into the flow of it, and it becomes your life or whatever.
Hmm.
But I don't want to like, because what I do is fun and it's music and it's not. I just don't want to be insensitive to say it's like the military, because I can't really fully equate that, but aspects of it are very
Yeah.
like that.
So, does that mean? I mean, I've seen pictures. It looks like you guys are out and having fun and stuff. But the old school days of like, kind of the debaucherous pirate ship going around. Like you're probably debaucherous to some extent, but like, like once again, you're there to get in, get the show done, and get out with a pocket full of money, right? With the least amount. So you probably what I'm trying to say is it's not like the old days of throwing TVs out of the hotel windows and shit like
Exactly.
that.
Like it takes a lot to describe that to someone that has really no scope of even just like guitar repair and like what that includes, much less like being on the road, being away from your family, all that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I say to people is like, it's not like Motley Crue in the '80s.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a technician. I'm there to do my job. Like the primary function of my job is to take care of all these things so the artist can have the freedom to do what they want.
Uh-huh.
And they don't have to worry about their Les Pauls making it into the truck or whatever. Like when something's going down, they don't want to be like, oh, what the heck? So
Uh-huh.
you kind of, you become familiar, you become comfortable with the band and the other crew members and what their show is going to be like and what you think may or may not happen. And you can kind of fill in the gaps there with fun and beer and debauchery. But, at the core of it, I'm doing a job for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So you're a guitar tech, and I thought maybe first what we'd talk about is like, so you're in charge of obviously handing the guy the guitar or whatever, but you're also in charge of maintaining the equipment. And what kind of scope? Or like, are you maintaining the amps? Are you maintaining the guitars? What's that? What's the scope?
Basically, yeah, like so basically everything in the world I'm responsible for, So if I work for a guitar player, from the guitar to the cable to the pedal board to the amp to the speaker cable to the cabinet, the whole signal path is my domain.
Okay.
Um, so, and even placement, like so we start the day, um, wake up on the bus, I try to wake up before load in, and so that's load in is like when the day starts. That's when the venue opens. That's when we open the typically we have like a semi truck, you know, a full 18-wheeler full of gear, like all the way front to back, totally full, and it's like lighting truss and cases and merch, lots of merch, things like that. And so that time is set, and it'll pretty much be the same every day. So you know, with clutch, we do it about noon because we don't have a ton of. We're not building like risers, and we don't have.
Can I stop you for 1 second? How many guys are in the bus with you on the clutch tour?
So there's 4 band members, and so we share one bus with this. You know, I've worked with bands where there's a crew bus and a band bus, and it's kind of like separate lives a little bit. But with the clutch crew, it's very much like a family. Yeah, so there's the 4 band members. We have a tour manager, we have a front of house sound guy, we have a lighting guy, we have a merch guy, and then we have a stage left tech who's also their monitor engineer because they're on in-ear monitors, and so he has his own desk. He's doing all the wireless stuff, and then he kind of also covers like the bass. Like we kind of split the stage down the middle with me. With his name's Al Function, and so there's typically like I think there's 10 of us, 11 with the driver on the bus, and tour buses sleep 12. So there's a little bit of room to breathe in there. But you know, I've been on crews where there's 16 crew members plus the band. So
On one bus?
that would be 2 buses. That would be one of those situations where like the band has a bus, and the tour manager, and maybe if they have a production assistant or a personal assistant would ride on that, and then all the technicians would be on our own bus, and that's a lot of fun because it's like no parents, especially when it's like no tour manager on the bus. Like there's no one. It's just the crew guys and you know girls. That tour that I'm thinking of specifically was like 50% men, 50% women, all living on that bus. Which is great because then everyone's on their P's and Q's. Everyone's clean. Like you know, I've done tours with metal bands or whatever where it's all dudes, all band, all crew on one bus, and like no one gives a flying flip about anything. Like dudes walking around in their boxers, and you're just like, oh god.
I watched some old videos of Pantera on tour, and I just thought that looks. Even when I was young, that looked too disgusting for me. Like
Absolutely, it can be. You know, not everyone's like that. You know, but there, you know, some people find every band's different. You know, and so the things that some people will allow and pass on the bus is just like mind blowing. But having women on the crew is amazing because it brings everyone's professional level up to a certain standard. And it's great.
Okay. So so you guys are doing everything. Are you showering on the bus? Or you like?
Some buses do have showers, but they're you're on a limited water tank, so it'd have to be very much like a Navy shower, like turn it on, like and then turn it off. And
so are you guys renting hotel rooms and then run into the hotel room to do stuff, or?
It depends. So most venues have showers.
Okay.
Bigger venues, I mean, obviously like club size, it's limited. Or if club size venues do have showers, like you really don't want to use it. It's like covered in band stickers and like graffiti, just like the bathroom you would see.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Out in the audience, it's like almost the same thing. But a lot of medium sized, bigger venues will have really nice shower facilities. Like every green room will have a shower. So typically we'll shower, like I'll personally, like some crew guys will shower first thing in the morning before load in. They like to start their day, but I like to just get dirty and sweaty all day, and then after I'm done with the day, take a shower, go to the bus, and do it. But on days off, we get hotel rooms, and so we can. Some people will wait for the hotel room to shower and like just be dirty.
So okay, so you get off the bus and are you helping load in, or is that somebody different?
Definitely. And again, that's kind of one of those things. Like every band's different, the budget's different, the size of the band is different, and so that all changes. But I've gotten to the point now where I'm working with bands that are able to hire a lot of local crew, and so that's all done through the venue, through the promoter, and so kind of on the contract is like we need 6 people or we need 10 people to help us, like for load in, load out. Then we need 2 people all day, so you can cut most of those people, and they need to come back to help us at the end of the night to get all the stuff back on the truck. But we want like 2 people there all day for if I'm like, hey man, will you dig this case out? Like I forgot, backup pedal that something or whatever. Like if you go to those cases and pull out this case number and pull out this object for me, like thanks, bro. But starting in a very kind of punk rock way, I always was like one of the few crew members and was very hands-on with like loading all the gear, emptying the truck, yada yada. So to me, even now, I still like to be pretty hands-on loading and unloading. And
is that because of concerns about? I mean, you're maintaining the gear, so like it kind of behooves you to get in there and be hands-on because
definitely for like clutch. Yeah, for like with clutch, we like to have 1 or 2 dudes stay on the truck, and they'll just kind of point, like, hey, all right, this case it's flipped upside down, so you need to slowly roll it down, put it on its wheel, send it out. Cool, this case is next. Like, be careful, this one has a weird wheel, or things like that. And then we'll have someone at the bottom of the ramp coming off the truck to, as it's coming down, like, hey man, this case goes stage left. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then we'll have a couple people on stage to also direct where the cases go, because if everyone just dumped the whole semi directly to the stage, it would just be a nightmare of cases everywhere. So we kind of stagger ourselves through the chain and help direct, help lift. We kind of we're still pretty hands-on, so that's definitely a part of the job is getting there for load in, cracking the trailer or the truck, and just start sending cases in.
Okay.
That's how the day starts. And typically, like I said a minute ago, that's for clutch, that's noon, which is great because I can wake up at 10:30, roll out of bed, roll out of my bunk, kind of get dressed. And then typically, for me personally, that's like the one time of the day where I can kind of look at my phone and be like, where's the delicious coffee shop? I'm going to walk 7 blocks to go get a latte, come back, and be ready for the day. And then for the rest of the day, I'm pretty much in the venue until we leave. So I like to try to wake up early to have that moment
of having a little bit of a life outside.
Yeah,
of that.
like see the city a little bit, and like early evening. There's a big chunk of time typically too, and sometimes we'll go and choose our own dinner instead of catering or something like that. Or if it's a cool city, or if there's a cool museum, or if we're in Europe and there's a castle nearby, like I like to try to take the time to do that because you're most of the time you're in a city for less than 24 hours, and talk to family and friends like, oh, it's amazing, you get to travel, like you go to Europe several times a year, you go to Australia and Asia, and I'm like, they're like, yeah, it must be crazy. I'm like, yeah, but I'm in each city for like 18 hours, and 12 of that I'm working. So I try to make the time to take advantage of that.
And that's mostly going to be in the morning before you
mostly in the morning, yeah, for sure. And then after we do sound check, we can continue to address like the daily schedule, but typically after sound check, after my artist sound checks will be done, we'll kind of clear the stage a little bit so the support acts can come on, and at that point I'm pretty much free until a comfortable amount of time before show.
So you're setting up before sound check though, right? Like you're going through the cases and breaking stuff out.
Yeah, and so that's we'll get all the cases from loading in, from the trailer. We'll get everything on stage, and then we'll start building. I still take advantage of the hands because they're there. We're paying them to help us lift all this heavy stuff. So I'll have them help me uncase amps out of the road cases and guitar heads, and I'll have them take, lids to cases and put them in dead world, which is what, once a case is empty, it's called dead, So It's like, this case is dead, you can get it off the stage. Like, where do you want me to put it? I'm like, where's your dead world? Because every venue has typically a place where they like to stash cases, and I'm like, that's on you, man, you work here, I don't know, like, wherever your dead cases go, it's dead, like, get it out of my face.
So can you tell when you're looking at one of these guys that's helping whether or not they've got any sense of like the value of what they're...
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, some dudes, with smaller bands, or like years ago, even with the Sword, we would have kind of like, shiesty promoters, and they're like, yeah, we've got hired, loaders and hands for you. And we get there, and it's like the bartenders, and the bartenders just found out that day they're helping us load the gear. And
Uh,
like, that always bothers me because I'm like, dude, this guy didn't sign up for that. He's your
yeah,
bartender. He didn't think he was going to come in and have to like load all these
yeah.
full stack amps onto stage. And it's
And
like, that bothers me because it's A, he doesn't know what he's doing, and B, that's like, you're taking advantage of someone. But
plus, he's probably going to be a little passive aggressive about it too. Like, here's your fucking amp.
yeah, totally. And like, I understand. Like, so like I try to be, some crew guys are really rough or rude or short with loaders, but I try to be as like positive and friendly as possible because we're gonna come back to that venue. I don't want them to be like, oh, Clutch is coming back, or the Sword, or whatever band. Like, those guys were assholes. Like, I don't want to,
Yeah.
So you set, so I always try to be really, helpful because they're helping me. But yeah, you'll have dudes that obviously have never touched a case before. They're trying to like undo the latches, and they're just like looking at it like, I'm like, hey man, check it out. So you just spin this like this, spin this like this, and then it's good to go. Let's take it off. And they're like, oh, cool. But they'll also have guys that show up in like sandals, and I'm just like, you have to leave. I'm sorry.
No sandals
You're like
allowed.
so unprepared in every way possible.
Yeah.
I don't want you walking anywhere near anything because if your foot gets crushed, I
Yeah.
don't want whatever.
So you're
whoever that's going to affect. I don't
you're
want
like
to.
rock and roll OSHA in there, making sure.
Yeah, I mean, like to a certain degree, like I don't want anyone to get hurt, and I definitely don't want someone to get hurt moving my stuff. So you can definitely get a vibe pretty quick. If someone's been doing it for a week or someone's been doing it for a year, definitely, and
So everything's set up, and you're waiting for a sound check, right? Is that where you start kind of going over the gear and thinking about whether or not you need a string change or whether or not you
Yep. So like I'm just gonna keep using Clutch as an example because it's the gig that I'm on right now. So we load in at noon, and by 1:30 at the absolute latest, like nightmare situation, we have everything set up ready for the band to play. Like amps in place, drum sets built, pedal boards are out. Like I have my Tech World built. Everything's like ready to go, and then we typically don't do sound check till 4:20. And
literally and figuratively, or
oh yeah.
Okay.
And that's not always for us, but whatever. So yeah, we'll have a few hours to where I can string change, or maybe the night before, the guitar player's like, oh, like my guitar is crackling. Like every time I did, moved the knob, or, I can address those issues and I have the time to do it. So, and that's also not even just built in for us, it's built in for the venue. Cause sometimes you get to the venue and our front of house guy is like, yeah, the left side of the speaker stack is like 5 dB quieter than the right side of the speaker stack. And so we have that time built in so we can address our issues, fix anything that needs to be fixed, work on pre-production for the next couple of days. So we have time built in definitely for repair and for maintenance.
So are you getting like intelligence reports on what the venue is like before you get there? Like, do you know what kind of board they're using and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. And so before the tour even starts, typically a tour will have a production manager and a tour manager, but sometimes they share the same hat. It's the same person. But before we even leave for the first show, all of that is already taken care of. They've already addressed the venue. If we haven't been there, a lot of times we've been to these venues and we already know, because like sometimes, I've been to some venues like 25 times or whatever. So it's like, oh, I know what I'm getting into, But yeah, we have a tech writer that we send out. Like, these are the things that we need to make our show happen. Make sure you have these. If you don't have them, find a way to supply these needs, like whether it be stage size or amount of speakers or amount of power on stage. So that's all taken care of before we get there. And a lot of stuff we kind of roll with too. And so with Clutch and most of the bands I've worked with for a while now, we'll have our own soundboards, our own cables, all the mic stands are ours, all the microphones are ours. Like, we just want a blank stage, and we'll tie in our own power distribution, and we have our own desks, we run our own everything, so
What's a desk?
like a front of house desk, like a mixer.
Okay.
And so that's typically, what we will call them is like just the desk. And so with Clutch, we use the Midas Pro 2s, Pro 2C. There's the smaller version, and we have the same thing front of house for our sound engineer for the crowd, and then we have the same desk on stage running the in-ears just for the band. So that's nice. But yeah, we'll definitely have, everything advanced is what the term is for that. Is, it's like, yeah, well, I'm working on advancing all these shows, so, we make sure we have everything that we need and they have everything and we're all on the same page. So,
Cool.
yeah. And sometimes it does, sometimes whoever's in charge of that at the venue isn't very good at sending emails. So every once in a blue moon, we'll be walking into like, we haven't heard from this guy about what we asked and what we need. So it might be good. It might be really bad. So, but these days most people are pretty professional, and that's all kind of sorted before we get there. For sure.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it seems like there's been a lot of evolution on your end, and I would imagine like there's probably just been as much evolution on the venue end too, of kind of separating out the wheat from the chaff. Like nobody wants to go to a shit venue, so I imagine to be competitive, they've got to kind of get their shit together too.
Totally. And also, a lot of larger venues are all owned by larger companies, like it'll be a Live Nation venue. So Live Nation staffs the venue with people that, have the experience, the know-how, and the professionalism to make shows happen there. So, these days are really on a larger level. There aren't that many like fully independent venues where they just do what they want to do, how they want to do it. A lot of them are owned by like larger corporations, and they have like House of Blues and stuff like that. They have a certain level that they expect of their employees, so that's nice.
So you were talking about Tech World. Is that right? Your world is Tech World.
Yeah, and so typically for whatever your tech position is, it's blank world. So for guitar techs, it's guitar world. For drums, it's drum world. For monitors, it's like monitor world. And
Okay.
so that's just your zone. And so I'll typically set up everyone's amps, or I'll set up the instruments on stage. I'll set up the stage first, and then I'll look in the wing. I'm typically stage right wing, and I'll just kind of look at the space I have, what I know I need to set up, and just kind of try to arrange it the same way every day. And so, I'll have my work box, I'll have a guitar vault. With Clutch, I also do drums for JP, so I'll have his drum vault. And
so you're drum world and guitar world.
Yep, for Clutch, which is a lot of fun. I played drums before I played guitar as a kid, and it's their so a guitar tech for Tim, the lead guitar player, and JP, the drummer, and it's they make it really easy on me, which is great. They're really nice dudes.
So is there bass world or?
Right, and so I was saying earlier, our stage left tech, who's Al Function. He does bass world, and then Neil for Clutch, lead singer, plays guitar on like a handful of songs throughout the set, depending on what songs show up on the set list, and he'll also do Neil's guitars and stuff too. But he's mostly focused on mixing their ears and the audio aspect of it. It just before I came in, he was doing all of it. He was so part of finding a new crew was relieving Al's workload a little bit, and so that's kind of where I fit into that picture.
So you're traveling around and going from kind of climate to climate and stuff. How much adjusting is there to do on guitars? I would think a lot, but is that accurate?
Yeah, it can actually really suck sometimes.
Oh, hold on.
Nope, we're back. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that can be really tough. It's nice with the vault, which is like a big guitar vault. I think you showed a picture of it on the video that you had. It's basically a road case where all the guitars live in it. I just take the lid off, and they're all in there, kind of bungee corded into their position. They got the bungee cords, and they're good to go. And when I first started working for the Sword, they didn't have a vault. All the guitars were just in SKB flight cases, and so I'd have like 12 of them or something, which is a nightmare because it's so many loose guitars, and then once they're all emptied, then I have like these like 12 empty cases.
Yeah.
I'm like, where am I gonna put all these? You
It's
know,
like popping latches all day.
all day. Yeah, for sure. And that's that's where you can kind of get in a lot of trouble because I feel like the vaults, they're kind of like Pelican cases, which is a case brand where they have air valves, so as pressure changes, it'll expel pressure and stuff like that, which helps a little bit. But when everything's just in an SKB case on a winter tour, like I have to wait. I try to wait as long as I can before I open any guitar cases because I've seen checking happen like as it's happening.
Well, checking, I would think your truss rod adjustment would just go crazy too.
Oh yeah, for sure too. But also the finish is the big thing too. I mean, the truss rod thing is kind of an obvious one. Kind of as you were thinking, and an easy fix. Like every guitar I take out, I tune, I check the intonation, check the action every day on every guitar because of those reasons. But then also like the climate changes because it might be 1 degree outside and snowing, and we're walking all these cases through snow to get into the venue, and then the venue's like 74 degrees, and like they've been like last winter we did a Canadian tour where it was like -40 on the drive all night, and it was like the coldest the bus driver had ever seen. He like took a picture of it and showed it to us the next day. It's like, that's so cold. So
are the guitars underneath the bus?
They're in like an 18-wheeler, so they're in their own, in a separate vehicle, but still. Like,
is that 18-wheeler insulated or anything, or is it just like no? Oh
like
man.
Yeah, so they might be rolling down the road for 10 hours in -40 degrees, and then all day they're in that same weather, and then again, once we bring them into the venue's like nice and warm and crispy. So it's like I've seen. Like Brian from the bass, he had a Fender Special Run P bass. It's kind of like a natural finish, and we just did this tour where just chunks of the finish and lacquer were coming off every day. Like I'd open it and there'd just be like a new chunk gone from the guitar, and I'd just be like, "Dude, Brian, I'm sorry. Like I didn't do this. Don't think And he's like, "Whoa, that happened." I was like, "Yeah, it's really cold and really hot," and so. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of issues with that. And so I typically try to tune a guitar to the 12th fret, and so I can just know right then where I'm living, and like I'll like sit there, tune it, hit the harmonic, watch my strobe, and kind of go from there on what happened to the guitar that night.
So were you able to set up a little bit of what Guitar World looks like in your room?
Yeah, I left it in cases, so like you can kind of see. Let me flip my camera. So it's sitting right in front of me, and so this is what I call like my fly rig, and so this is what I would fly with.
So there's workbox and there's fly rig, right?
Yeah, and so like work boxes are typically really large. They'd be like the size of my like normal kind of toolbox, or bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
Because they'll have like taller, whatever. But this is like what I can fly with, and so I have this Pelican 1510, and I have this, which is like my mini work box, and then my Pelican backpack, and that's kind of housing everything that I need. To go on the road, and then this is like an old guitar boat that we used to use on the Sword, and so I would find something like this. Typically, it'd be like a 410 or a 412 like road case that I would set this on, and then just kind of open it up, and
oh wow,
it's ready to go. This is kind of a cheaper one, and set up the legs. Kind of hard to do one-handed, obviously.
So wait, that's a guitar stand, or?
Yeah, so this would be like, if I was setting up Guitar World right now, I would do this first. Pardon the camera angle.
No, man.
And again, this would be if we didn't have a vault, and then I would just start populating this with guitars.
Yeah, throw them in there. What are these your whips?
Yeah, these are some of my whips. My room's kind of messy because we're moving in about a week or two. So my shop area is kind of jacked up. But
Well,
Yeah, so
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
yeah, of course. So like, yeah, this would be like my little guitar world, and so
Mm-hmm.
this would live to my right. Typically is where I like to have that. And then again, if I don't have my work box and I just have my fly rig, I would use like a 412 case because it's like the perfect height for it to sit
Okay.
about waist high. I can pull my backpack off here.
So if for some reason the pandemic was to end tomorrow and Clutch was like, we're in Cincinnati, grab your fly rig, gonna go. You would actually be able to go perform your job right
Oh yeah,
with
yeah,
this stuff.
totally. And so
Okay.
like this is housing all my tools. I've got my gloves. I have everything. Like this is a really important thing, a battery bank, because you never know.
What's the battery bank for? Is that like a for phone charging or?
Yeah, phone charging, and then I also use it to charge like my strobe tuner because I use a virtual strobe. So typically I'll have dedicated power run to me on stage, but if we're at a festival and everything is faster and they might not have like a proper power run to me, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to take the time to do it, I'll just like plug my strobe tuner into this and not have to worry about
Oh, good.
it. These are like, I have all my tools kind of broken up, so these are going to be everything that I would use for action. Of
Ah.
course, there's going to be Stumac stuff all over the place.
Uh huh.
I've got like Hairiest things in here.
And then yeah, the ESP
Just all
wrench.
those, yeah, with all those little things that I tried to keep in there. This is what I use for string changing. I used to use like the drill bit with the Stumac bit, but honestly, I just love the classic, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty good one for the plastic over the counter string winders. I think that Dunlop is
Totally.
pretty much the best one.
It's. I've messed with a lot of them. They're all kind of whatever, but I prefer to do it by hand. I always kind of keep some Euro.
Oh yeah, you gotta have Euro stuff.
Um, and then like I have my solder kit right here. So I've got some of these fun guys.
Yeah.
Shrink wrap. My soldering iron, my snips.
What kind of soldering iron are you running there?
So I've been using this guy on the road.
Yeah.
And then I have the base for it as well, but I like it because it has the LEDs.
Yes.
In there, and that's great.
What wattage?
What's that?
What wattage are you there?
I think this is 40.
Okay.
With the bass, and I just crank it all the way, get it as hot as possible, and just do it as fast as I can. But yeah, I've got all my different, 60/40, like different whatever kind of solder you need. Maybe some Allens in there.
A friend of mine was showing me he's got there's a cordless soldering pencil now that looks pretty interesting. I don't know if that would be something.
I've seen those, and I've been interested as well because a lot of times I won't pull out the bass, and I'll just like people will laugh at me, but I'll just like set a roll of gaff tape, and I'll just kind of balance my solder gun there, and then sometimes I'll smell something. I'm like, oh shit, it's touching the thing!
Yeah.
Like, because maybe I just need to like do an input jack, and it's going to take me 30 seconds, and I don't want to pull everything out and just for that, So I'll just like, or maybe I'll balance it on like a Coke can or whatever. But I've got my multimeter in here because when we're in Europe, it's nice to read power before I plug anything in there. Continuity issues. This is a big guy right here. I use this all the time.
Klein Tools, man, that's a nice one.
Yeah. Like I had another one that I'd been using for years, and it was just beat to hell. So this is actually new, and I haven't gotten to use it because of the Corona. My new guy. Where's this guy? This is all Allens in here. Various different forms of Allen wrenches and stuff. Kind of loose. And then I've got a more utility bag here. I try to keep it all bagged. So, I'm familiar with what's what in each one, but, opening this and it just being all loose is a nightmare. So this one I've got all my cloths, polishing cloths in here. Some glue, like my in-ear monitors are in here, and then my own microphone, which is nice since we're all with Clutch and several other bands. Most bands that are on in-ear monitors, all the techs have a microphone in their area, and we all have our own mix in our own ears that the band's not hearing. So if I see something going on stage left, I can just talk into my microphone, and the other crew guys are going to hear me in their ears, being like, "Hey, like someone just threw a beer on stage, and it's like right in front. It's like, can you go grab that?" Or like, we can just like communicate any issues as the show's happening. And so I definitely see a lot of fans see me like just talking into this, and they're like, "What is this guy doing?" I'm like, "I'm talking to my crew boys," like.
They think the band is lip syncing and you're the real singer.
Yeah, like I think that all the time. I'm like, man, I wonder what people think I'm doing when I'm up here like laughing my face off talking to this microphone. Because right before showtime, like literally the moments before showtime, we're all like just kind of antsy, and we're all amped, and so we'll all just kind of be messing around and joking around.
Hey, what's up with that? What's up with that green Lego in there? I see a green Lego.
That's a good one. So, a lot of crew guys have, I don't know what you call them, like good luck charms
Woogie.
or something.
It's a Woogie.
Yeah. And so I got this one on like an early sword tour. I was walking out of the venue in the afternoon to go get food or buy cigarettes or something, and then there was this like kind of wook style like hippie chick with like dreads and like obviously like a traveler. Like walks up to me and she's like, "Hey man, I'll trade you something for a cigarette." And I was like, "Oh, you can just have one. I'm all good." Like she's like, "You don't know what I got. I got cool shit." And I was like, "Whatever. Here's your cigarette." And then as I hand her the cigarette, she does like the "I'm giving you drugs" like hand pass, like shake her hand and puts it in my hand. And I was like, "What the heck?" And so I've just kept it in my work box ever since. It's been there for like 10 years,
Oh my
so
god!
it's just one of those things. And then in here is a piece of rock from the Parthenon.
Oh wow!
To it. So just that's something that always just lives in there. Just one of those things.
That's
and
good.
this is kind of Dave's world up here. Like I have my phone charger, another battery thing. Another really important thing to have on the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially on a bus with 11 other dudes. I mean.
Yeah, because typically you're going to be like brushing your teeth because like the water on most buses isn't potable, and so you're going to be brushing your teeth with like bottled water. And so sometimes I'll just wait till I get in the venue and go into the bathroom and brush my teeth or whatever. Headlamp, and then I've got a bunch of ponchos for if we're doing an outdoor festival and it starts raining. I can throw these over the pedal board real fast. They're clear, they're light. You can still step on your pedals from it, but nothing's gonna get jacked up. So those are kind of something I definitely like to always have.
Any first aid in there? You got any Band-Aids or anything?
I used to have a small little first aid. I've got like alcohol wipes, some little stuff, but I kind of stopped traveling with a first aid kit, which is probably I probably should put that back into my kit. But no, I typically don't really have a first aid kit.
You keep super glue on you at all?
Yeah, I got that right in here.
Oh, and the glues.
I think this one is just kind of like I had it a second ago. I think this one's just from like
Oh yeah. That's the stuff.
It's got that squeezy. You can really drop it on there.
My day doesn't start if I don't have that on my bench. That's the best gel CA I've ever.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like it for sure.
And it's clean like that too. Like it, like I guarantee you can keep that in your case just like that. You'll never have a problem with it unless you really smash it.
I've had it for like I can have these for months or years, and like they always open, they always close, and it always comes out. It's great.
Here's a little thing too. Like if you squeeze it and you're not getting any out, and you think you're to the end of it, if you actually clip that harness off there, there's like probably like 2 or 3 more ounces of glue that you can squeeze out because there's just a little tube in there.
Sometimes I'll run a guitar string, like a chopped guitar string, right into there too if I have any problems. Just trying to clear any blockage or whatever. And then I also typically will have all these or a version of all these. Like I'm not going to bring the naphtha, but I like using Howard feed and wax. I think some people have a love-hate relationship with putting stuff like this on the fretboard. But
what is that? Is that silicone or is it?
No, I don't think there's silicone in it. A luthier friend of mine a long time ago, he would always use this on his guitars, and I just have always loved it. It smells great. I think Bellum makes something really similar to this now. There's another guitar luthier I follow on Instagram is Guitar Gore,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and he uses something really similar. Looks, and he says it smells like the way he described. Because I was like messaged him watching one of his Instagram stories. It's like, hey, what do you use to hydrate your fretboards? It looks amazing, and he described it to me, and it was a Bellum thing, and the way he described it, it sounded just like Howard Feed and Wax. And then this is, you can't leave home without this for sure.
Yeah.
Deoxys. That's, dude, that saves. I'll run this through pedals. I'll run this all the time. It's a go-to. But if we want to move on to this guy,
Yeah.
So this is this is made by Circle 3. I've had this one for years. Circle 3 is a case company. Give them a shout out because they're probably the best case company I've ever used. Seen a lot of love. I had my name spray painted on there and it's rubbed off. What's great is he makes his cases out of aircraft aluminum and not plywood. So like a lot of other companies like Tour Supply makes these Guitar Tech work boxes and they're made out of plywood. So right empty, they're like 25 pounds. And then I got to get all these tools in there and try to fly with it. So this is made with aircraft aluminum, super light when it's empty, super sturdy. So let me just open this bad boy up. So that's like can lock the neck rest. And boom, Dave's World.
Cool. That's like you're ready to go, right?
Yeah. And then I started putting more tools in the Pelican case to keep this lighter. And so there's really it's got all these pockets, but I keep them mostly empty. So when I'm actually working, if I'm, doing a repair and I don't want to clutter my workspace with tools, I'll just put whatever I'm using down in this cavity, or I'll just put it under there, and then I can kind of keep, so I don't accidentally gouge the guitar with a pair of pliers or whatever I have out.
Mm-hmm.
But then also this little plate it's got a magnet on it.
Oh, cool.
So I put all my screws, anything loose, bits and bobs right there, keeps them in place.
So wait a second. You bought the case. Did you put together the work area, or did it come?
This is
like
exactly how it came. I mean,
okay.
I added stickers, tape, and I drew on it when I was bored one day. But yeah, this is how it comes. It's the neck rest, the pad. I think he sells these for like $500, $600 or something like that. But yeah, you can kind of see that it's the aircraft aluminum instead of. And then I'll always keep these guys in here. And so I've been using this strobe for a while. I've brought, like real strobes out on tour, but kind of as we were talking about, sometimes when you go through cold climates, the strobe tuners will actually freeze.
Yeah.
Like the dial will just be stuck. And so that's not fun. So I've been using this one for a few years. I really like it. And then I will also use 2 to 3 tuners sometimes at the same time, just daisy chained. And this is going to be me. This is what I'm going to use to intonate. This is my reference point for as repair, all those things. And then whatever other tuners I use, I try to use whatever tuner the guitar player is using. So if he's using a Boss tuner, then I'm going to use a Boss tuner. If he's using the Polytune, then I'm going to use the Polytune, just so I also can see what he's going to see because I've seen just slight variations in tunings when like I hand him a guitar, like, dude, like on my micro or like mini Polytune, it's like it's always a little sharp or a little flat, and I'm like, dude, I tuned to a strobe, that shit's solid, and so I try to balance those two to see if there's any difference. Like once I'm repairing a guitar, working a guitar, intonating, I'll use this, and then during the show when I hand off a guitar, I'll use their tuner to tune the guitar, so I know we're on the same page, so to speak.
Do you tune for like individual like foibles of the artist too? Like I make a G chord in such a way that my pinky always pulls the E first out just a little bit. Like, do you have to like take into consideration like weird techniques that your guy might have?
A little bit, yeah, for sure. And then even with guitar to guitar, like this guitar that I just had on there, for instance, it's like I think it's like 2001 Les Paul Junior Light is what they called it. It's got like the mini traps but it's like one of those guitars where it's like
Oh yeah.
spreading it, and it's just like the neck is just waving. So there definitely are things to consider. Or even when I'm tuning a guitar, because I'll sit there and neurotically tune the same guitar for 10 minutes. Like it's like, okay, 3 songs from now he's gonna change to this guitar. Like I better spend these 3 songs tuning the same guitar over and over again, and then I really try to beat him up when I'm doing that. I'll just like sit there, tune him, and then retune it, and then do that, and retune it, and do that, and retune it. So by the time they get to them, it's like warm for my body. There's not going to be like a temperature change on the actual guitar. I've already kind of beat the strings into if they're going to slip or whatever. It's already happened, and so I'll sit there and just neurotically tune a guitar over and over again. And so I will take those things into mind. There was a guitar player that I worked for a while that I changed my strobe actually just like a few cents to compensate for how he like digs into the guitar. And he's playing a lot of like vintage Gibson hollow bodies and stuff, and so they kind of all have that like sway problem. Or not all of them, but you know what I mean. And he would always complain that his guitar was like slightly out of tune, but I had other issues with that guitar player, and he ended up getting fired from that band.
I wonder, like, do you deal with a lot of guitar players that are actually kind of like somewhat tech literate, or are they? Does it all across the board? Like they just don't. Do some of them not know anything about like?
Both, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like the Sword, for instance, Kyle Shutt. He could play any guitar through any amp and make it sound like he wants to play it, and he doesn't care. I mean, he cares. Like, obviously, he's the guitar player for a living. But as far as like, he's like, hey, my guitar's doing something weird, or like these pickups are weird, or whatever, and I'll sit there and explain it to him. He's just like, cool, And then JD from the Sword, for instance, the lead singer and the other guitar players, will spend like lots of time researching the pedal that he wants and trying them at home and like swapping pickups on guitars, trying to achieve that. And like maybe not on a repair aspect, he doesn't have the same, but he also had this Firebird that he's trying to make work for a while, and he came back to a tour and he's like, yeah, I wanted to put TV Jones pickups in it so it could sound like my Gretsch. So I just like got a drill and routed out the holes myself. Looks pretty good. I'm like, whoa, like yeah, wow, and so there's both.
Was that like an oh wow, like you might do when a kid hands you a piece of artwork, or was that?
Oh wow! No, he did a really great job on that actually, and like I don't think I ever, because once we got those pickups in it, he was really happy with it, so I never took them out to see what it looked like on the inside, but they were in the right spot and it worked. So like I was proud. I was proud of them.
Good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah, I've worked for guitar players that don't know anything, but then I've worked for guitar players that do guitar repair in their free time when they're home, and so like that's where it can get a little nerve wracking because like so like for instance like this is something that I don't really like to tell everybody, but I'm just going to do it because of the nature of the conversation stuff. But sometimes what I do is like a mind game almost, where I know everything is the same. I know the guitar is intonated. I know the amp sounds good. I know everything's how it is and it was exactly the night before, yada yada. But a guitar player might be like, I don't know, man, something's weird. Like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. And I'm like, oh, let me look at it, man. Cool. Yeah. Like, let's check it out. And, like, give me your guitar. Yeah. And they'll walk away. And I'll just be like, they'll come back. I'm like, here, check it out now.
Yeah.
And I hand it to them after doing nothing. And they're like, yeah, that's what's up. Like, you can't do that always for obvious reasons. But sometimes it's just kind of like, the room sounds different or whatever, and so you can't really pull that move on a guy that does guitar repair also, but it's a little bit of a game, but that's not something that happens often or I do often because I'm sure several people I work for are gonna watch this. But don't think I'm fucking with you guys.
Well, I don't know. Like if I like if I just had the heebie-jeebies before a show and that's all it took to like settle me down,
Exactly.
like that might just be just the thing, Like, and I might be appreciative that you did that.
Yeah. Because if there's something wrong, I will always address it. And I'll always fix it and I'll do everything because that's my job. But when I know that it's just something past, like once it gets into that mental realm, like I'll do what I can to also take care of that too. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a very mental game because these people are nervous. I mean, even people that have been doing it their whole life still get nervous or like feel like they like walk off stage like, oh, I feel like an idiot. Like that's because they're all real people too. So
Yeah, I can't. I couldn't even like I don't even think I could be a guitar tech. Like I don't think I could walk and hand somebody a guitar on stage. Like I wouldn't even. I would just think I would trip and like launch the guitar onto the audience or something like. But hey, Paul wanted to know. Paul Lampley, who's the I don't know if you've ever watched a Stu Mac commercial, but he's the guy that has the new workstation thing.
oh yeah, uh-huh.
But he's wondering, how did you get your first gig on the road? Did you just like go knock on the Sword's door and say, "Please, Mr. Sword, will you hire me?"
So it's actually, I think it's a fun, kind of cool story that I'll try to keep not too long winded or whatever. But before I've always been into guitar repair and amps, collecting amps, collecting guitars. I've always been like that kind of tone hound. Even when I was like 16 and I had like my Squire Strat, I like loved Tom Morello, and I was like, well, he put like a kill switch in his guitar. Like, what does that mean? And so like I've always been wanting to. I've been as interested into that aspect of guitars as also playing them. So like I already had that foundation of that without any formal school or training or anything. But I was in live sound reinforcement, so I worked for a sound company, and you meet a lot of bands that way for sure because we were like a rental company. So outdoor festivals, it'd be our sound system, our PA system, yada yada, and my like high school buddy, really good friend, got hired that way from the Sword. Like he mixed them. They didn't have a sound guy. It was like at a festival or like a store opening or like a record release or something. And they were like, hey, like you're a good sound guy. You want to go on tour with us? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, sure. And then after that, they had a couple like one-offs in Texas where it wasn't on a tour; it was just one show. And at the time, they had a guitar tech in Portland, Oregon, and in like Miami or something like that. And so they didn't want to fly either dudes out for a show where they're just playing one show. They want to conserve their budget, whatever. And so I'd already met them briefly through Joel, my who's the front house guy, my friend that I was talking about, and just kind of like did the the thing you should never do to like a guitar player if you're just like meeting. If like you run into them, you're like, hey man, what's your favorite Les Paul? Like I just kind of
Yeah.
like that. And, like there's like, and like for Kyle, it was they all played the Laney AOR Pro Tubes, and like that was the amp that I was obsessed with, and I have one right over there. And so I was like, dude, sick amp, I've got one of those too, and just we kind of snowballed the conversation. And so they were kind of like, hey Joel, your buddy Dave, like, do you think he'd want to do this like one show where he's gonna like guitar tech for us? Like, you think he'd be interested? And be like, yeah, I think Dave would be down for that. And called me, and I was like, duh. And so then it cut to, I knew the Sword was working on a new album. I was on vacation in northern Michigan where my family's had a house for like 100 years, and it's like in the most northern part of Michigan. So you fly into Detroit, drive 5 hours, yada yada. So I was leaving vacation. So it was the whole drive, the 5 hour drive from northern Michigan to Detroit. I was like, man, I should just like email the Sword dudes and be like, hey, like I know you guys have other guitar techs, but like if you ever were thinking about, like I'm always down if you guys ever looking for someone new. And then I was thinking about the whole flight from Detroit back to Houston, and then I had to drive from Houston to Austin, and like all these hours I was just spending thinking about it and thinking about it. I was like, man, I think that'd be really cool. I should definitely email like Brian or email like whoever's email from the Sword I had. And I'm putting the key into my front door, finally getting home to Austin, Texas, and Joel calls me, and I'm just like, oh, weird. I'm like, hey, Joel, what's up? And he's like, hey dude, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm literally walking in my front door from vacation. What are you up to? And he's like, hey, I think you have the job. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, Kyle from the Sword just called me and he's like, hey, like your buddy Dave, you think he'd want to work for us like full time and be our guitar tech? And I was like, I haven't sent the email yet. Like, what? What do you mean? And so
Oh
like,
my God.
it was just like kind of a trip for me, and like it all snowballed from there.
Meant to be.
Yeah, it was just one of those weird things, and so I think about this a lot when people ask me like how you get into it, and like a little bit of it is like luck, a little bit of it is having the knowledge, and then a little bit of it is just like magic, kind of, and it's kind of went from there, and so it's hard for me to be like, okay, this is how you do it. Go out and do this and have fun, you know.
What was the Sword album you went out for the first time?
Apocryphon.
That's the one that got me into it. I had a kid working for me. He's like, dude, the Sword, and I was like, all right. And then that was the one that hit for me. Like, I love the the first three or whatever, but that one, like, it's
a really good sounding record, for sure. I'm just gonna plug my phone in so it doesn't die or anything. And I'd worked with him a little bit on Warp Riders, and then that was like the full time Dave's our dude. And then I really became like known as that, like I was they had such a small crew, and I'd always have to sound check all their instruments in front of the crowd and stuff. And so by the time I like left the Sword, like people in the crowd would be like, Dave, Dave, and all that kind of stuff. And so it was fun, and I really am thankful for those guys. And
do they have like people that follow them around, like almost like the Dead or something, or?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, every band I've worked for does, but yeah, there are a couple super fans. Like for the Sword, there was one super fan that his name was Rhett, and he lives in Dallas, but he worked for like a hotel chain doing their something with their like computer systems. And so he'd have to fly out to all these different hotels to like update their systems, do whatever. I'm not exactly sure what his job was, but he got to choose when and where he got to do what region, and he would just base that around Sword shows.
Oh my God.
And so I would see him in like Portland, I would see him in Detroit, I would see him in Dallas and in Austin and in Houston, and then like in Atlanta, and like I would just see Red. I'd be like, "What are you doing here?" And like they have numerous fans like that. Clutch does too. Like every band I've worked for definitely has those diehards that kind of show up, and you're just like they're in Sweden. Like, dudes, I saw that dude. He's here in Sweden. Like, what? Like, like Clutch has a guy Wendell that when we were in Europe, and I think he lives in Ohio, but we were in Europe last December, and he came out to all the UK shows, and like he always yells our names from the crowd. He's like, "Hey, Al!" Like, Dave! He's like in the front row, and like I'm in like Nottingham, UK, and I hear Wendell, which is unmistakably Wendell. And I just like look around, I'm like, guys, Wendell's here. Like he came to the UK.
Does that make you feel grounded? Do you feel like you're like you've got a connection to home or something when he does that, or do you?
A little bit, yeah. Like it's familiar in a weird way.
Hey,
and like we don't always spend a lot of time with those people. Sometimes we do, sometimes they don't. But they're always really nice. They're always really excited to be at the show. Like they're always really cool people. But like there's not a lot of time for us to interact with them and things like that. But yeah, you're just like, Wendell's here. It's gonna be a good show.
Hey, Danny West of West Guitar Works wants to know what was the learning curve like on the first tour? Like, I mean, like a lot of it's how to change an output jack, but do you know how to change an output jack when like when the chips are down and like the band's ripping and like
there's definitely a learning curve, and a lot of it was mostly just kind of trying to set up my world and like what I actually need, the space I need, things like that. And I've always kind of been like in high school I did theater, tech theater and stuff like that, so I was always kind of comfortable with the pressure, because not every job you have are like thousands of people watching you make mistakes, you know, or like thousands of people watching, you know, like when you're working in an office, you make a mistake, your manager's like, hey, you forgot to fill this on your report. You're like, oh, duh, sorry. But when you're doing that in live music, there's like thousands of people being like, why isn't the guitar working?
Mm-hmm.
What's that guy doing out there? And I'm just like, you know, like pulling all the cables and trying to like, you know, I try to manage that stress and the pressure as best as I can. I've gotten really good about it. And I was talking to Dan, the bass player from the Clutch, after something happened. I don't remember what happened on stage, but I'm always like, yeah, whenever like a problem happens on stage, I always feel like I'm like sitting there smoking a cigarette, like, I got this. Just calmly walk over, plug it in, and I'm like, got you. But in reality, I probably am like, you know, like running around like, oh shit, like sweating and like. I try to play it cool just for like the sake of the guitar player, the sake of the audience and stuff. But you know, it doesn't always probably come across as being as calm and collected as I think I am and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I mean, like you always have spare guitars for when the shit really hits the fan. But typically, like if something happens to a guitar, that guitar player is going to want that guitar back the next song because that's the guitar they want to be playing. You know, like that would happen with JD. If he like broke a string or something was weird, I would like run out. We'd like swap guitars real quick, and then I would go back to my work box and then just start flying through that guitar, trying to figure out what it is. Like I'll have an amp typically, which I didn't pull out to show you, but I'll have like an amp on here. I'll sit there, I'll plug it in, I'll plug in headphones, like I'll sit there or I'll like change the string as fast as I can, and then I'll be like, well, if this string broke, that string's probably gonna break, and that string's probably gonna break. So I'll just like try to change all the strings as much as I can, stretch them, do the whole thing as fast as I can. So when that next song is over, I can just be like standing there side stage, like,
there you go.
Like, hey, bring it. And I'm like, all right, here we go. You know, like here's your guitar. So,
is your fly box still set up?
Yeah, it's right in front of me. Yep.
You want to do world's fastest string change for us? Do you have anything that needs changed?
Of course I do. I think anyone that does guitar repair will agree that you spend all day working on guitars, and then you look at your guitars and like that jack is wobbly, that one's crackly, those strings are 2 years old. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, so let me make sure I got the right.
And I think this is going to be a series. I think I'm going to have. I think maybe this will be part. Oh! Before you do that, do you have any widgets that are purely your own for my series? What's your widget?
Yeah, so I thought about that, and there's a couple things that I pulled out that I like. So one of them is something that just anyone can buy, but I purpose it in a different way. And that's going to be the Neutrik popless cable. And so those are for like, you know, I think they're originally intended for guitar changes, like for like an acoustic guitar. So, you know, if you don't have a tuner or something, you can pull it out, and that's going to break the circuit so it doesn't pop. And so once it's out, you can sit there, touch the amp, whatever, and it's not a big deal. But what I do with these is I use this from the amp to the pedal board.
Okay.
So if something on the pedal board breaks, or if like something's weird, or if I need to swap a pedal in the middle of a show, I pull this out from the last pedal in the chain. And so the amp's silent. I can sit there and unplug any pedal I want. It's not going to be like, you know.
Awesome.
Like thing that I like kind of learned over the years, where I was like, oh. Then so if there's any problems, I just pop that out. I can do whatever I need to do to the pedal board, like change a power cable, whatever. It's not going to make hideous noises through the amp, and then plug it back in. It's good to go.
Outstanding.
So that's kind of an easy one. And then this one, I'm actually trying to work on making this a reality for something people can buy. I'm trying to find the right pedal for this. So this isn't a delay pedal, but the idea for this is for delay pedals. So this is just like an overdrive pedal, but I found this like children's toy, because I have a 2-year-old, and these were like darts, and this was like the blunted end of like a dart that you could throw. everything. And what I started using, it just like hit me one day. It's like this number right here.
Yeah.
And so this could be repeats. This could be level. This could be time. This could be speed. But it like perfectly fits over the knob. It turns perfectly. It manipulates the knob, but you can do it with your foot.
Oh, cool.
So it's on your pedal board, and like maybe you want to do a delay swell, but you're playing your guitar and you don't want to lean over and sit there and like crank on the pedal. You can just rub your foot. I'll just like run my foot up and down this, and I'll adjust repeats, or you could do it for any pedal. It doesn't really matter.
Awesome.
But that's something that I've been I just like hit me. I was like, oh my God, that's so great. So I just like shove them on a pedal and just be like, yeah, if you want to like go to oscillating delay while still playing your guitar, you can just tap it with your little toe there, twist it around.
Cool.
So that's something that I think I haven't really seen anyone else do necessarily.
So Danny wants to know, before we do the world's fastest string change, Danny wants to know, what's the hairiest repair you've managed to pull off on the road? Have you ever like tried to do a refret or anything like that on the road?
No. There's like, like fret dressing, sure, but there's just like, I mean, the tools that I would have to bring, it's just like the environment I'd have to do it in and the time that you're allotted. Like there's certain repairs that just aren't going to happen. Or you need to address before you leave, or it's going to have to wait till we get home, kind of a thing. And that's just for like major stuff. I've never had to like glue a headstock on, fortunately, knock on wood. I've never had to, I mean, a lot of it is, I'm looking at my guitars trying to remember if there's anything that I've ever had to do in the past for stuff on the road. But a lot of it is like really kind of rudimentary stuff, like maybe the strap buttons pull out and you have to shove some toothpicks in there, or pickup swaps a lot, swapped like a million pickups, but I've been pretty fortunate. I think I've had to like replace a nut, but it wasn't really like a time sensitive thing. Most of the time we have so many spares that if something's even like looks weird on the guitar player will be like, I'll just leave that in the vault. I won't play it for the rest of the tour. It's fine. So that's fortunate in that regard. So a lot of it is preventative maintenance and then just kind of rudimentary repairs and stuff that we're doing on the road, because it's kind of a nightmare to try. And like venues are like dark. That's something I didn't really pull out. It's like I have a lot of, these are all just lamps.
Yeah.
That I have to set up all over my work box, so I can see what I'm even doing, because a lot of times it's like pitch black, even in the middle of the afternoon. So the environment really doesn't really lend itself to a lot of big repairs, fortunately. But I think one of the funny things that I can think of, though, is a bass, one of Brian from the Swords' basses. I didn't have any toothpicks in my work box for whatever reason, and his strap pegs kept coming out or coming loose. And I was like, we were in Europe somewhere. I was like, shit, what do I do? It was like middle of the afternoon. I was like, this happened again. Like, I need... And so I just walked outside of the venue, because we were in Germany, or maybe France this one, and I just walked up to a tree with my knife and just shaved off like shavings of tree, and just like rolled them up and put them in there and did it. And then a couple days later, the other strap peg was doing it, and we were in an old building that was in Germany, where it was like an old building built by the Third Reich. It was like something from the Nazi Party, but now it's like a venue. I was like, shit, like, there's no trees. We're, like, in the middle of a parking lot. And I just walked up to, like, a wooden doorway with my knife and just, like, shaved off a piece of, like, the wooden door frame.
Oh, man.
A little sliver, and just shoved it in there. And so, like, sometimes, like, that's kind of, I feel like a good analogy for repairs on the road sometimes. It's like sometimes you are not prepared, and you have about an hour to make it right for them to come out here and play it and not notice that anything ever happened to it.
If I could suggest one thing for you to stick in your carry there, would be the JB Weld steel stick, epoxy stick. Like that stuff. That stuff is. I could only imagine like all the different ways it can be used for stuff like that. But anyway, all right. World's fastest string change. Throw the guitar on the bench.
Let me make sure I have my string changing box. I ripped this all apart a second ago. If I cheat and use the drill,
You
it's really fast. But I pretty much
run what you brung. If you got the drill, use the drill. Yep.
This is what I'm gonna do. And then I pulled out strings.
Can you get me a good camera angle to where we can see it?
Yep. I'm just gonna get the strings I need. Let's do the SG. Let me get this kind of. That velcroed to my wall. I velcroed my phone to the wall to make that work. That kind of makes sense a little bit.
I think it is. Is it gonna stay there?
Yeah. Let me just. I'll put a clone centaur there to keep it, or clone to keep it in place.
Oh, we're being decloned.
How's that angle? I can't see my.
I think we're pretty good. I think we'll get the general idea.
Okay, so typically when I'm gonna do this.
Hold on a second. I'm timing this. It's gonna be competitive. So we're going for broke here. On your mark, get set, go. Can you talk to her? Or do you need to stay completely focused?
I'm good. So I typically just do over/under on these because you change guitar strings so fast or so often that you sit there and do 2.5, 3 winds and stuff. Like it's just not gonna. You're just gonna eat yourself. I do Billy Gibbons over the top style.
So you're doing the one string at a time thing.
Well, I was just imagining if it was like a. Oh, okay. See, I was thinking if like someone broke a string on stage and just.
Well, yeah. I mean, it could be that.
I overwhelmed this one a little bit. And then this is my favorite trick right here.
Somebody just showed me that. And I forget who it was, but it made me feel sad that I've spent so much time and energy trying to find a good string clipper.
If the guitar's not in tune, but
yeah. Well, we get the idea.
Yeah, I mean that's typically what I would do. I used to use the drill, which is like way faster, but I just kind of do one over, one under, and then it's good. You know, like you can kind of probably see a lot of. I just kind of adopted that on all my guitars too.
Oh, you do the grip or kind of that Martin style one.
Yeah, I used to do 2.5, 3 winds or whatever, and I'll do that on my guitars sometimes if guitars I know I'm not going to change strings for a long time. But I've just adopted that because, again, like I'm changing guitar strings every 3 days, which is something I didn't really address. But yeah, typically guitar players, if they're not super sweaty individuals, like as a human, in which case you pretty much have to change the strings every day between like temperature, pressure change, the amount of sweat that gets on the guitar, yada yada. But typically I'll change guitar strings every 3 days and I'll stagger it. So like I'll change the strings on this guitar today and I'll change the strings on that guitar tomorrow and I'll change the strings on that guitar the next day, and then that day after that I'll go back to this guitar. So I'm not trying to change 5 guitars all in the same day. You know, I'll probably do 1 or 2 a day maybe, and then kind of keep going from there. But.
Cool. All right, Dave. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out and doing this, man. That was fascinating, and I hope to do it again when you're out on the road in this, pandemic thing. I'd like to get like a look behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're totally invited to come out whenever we get back to doing what we do.
Yeah. Well, if you get around New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, dude, of course. Well, yeah. And that Circle 3's from New Jersey, actually, this case company.
Really? What? All right.
I forget where exactly, but yeah, no, I would love to have you out, and you can get a whole new perspective of
That sounds amazing. Dave, take care, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Have a good one.
You too. Be safe.